Welcome to Thoro-Graph's 2015 Breeders' Cup Seminar. I'm Jerry Brown. What we're going to be doing in this seminar is discussing the horses that we consider to be serious contenders. If we don't mention a horse, it's because we don't think he's a major factor. Those of you who are not familiar with our data can find out more about it by going to the introductory section of our website. The basic idea is to measure those things that can be measured and factor them into the most accurate speed figure that can be made, creating a Thoro-Graph performance figure. So ground lost or saved on turns, as well as weight carried, is already factored into the figures for previous races, with 5 pounds worth 1 point on the Thoro-Graph scale. The lower the figure, the better the performance. Big figures are points. The superscript is for quarter points. So big 4 and little 3 means 4 3/4. But the big difference between Thoro-Graph analysis and conventional handicapping is that we then put the performance figures on a graph for each horse, so we can look at form cycles. We do not believe ability is a constant. We believe it changes from race to race for each horse, both in the short and long term. Each Thoro-Graph column is a year, with the calendar starting at the bottom and going up as the year goes on. Location, location, location. For the first time in quite a while, the Breeders' Cup will not be taking place in California, which means that the East Coast shippers will not be at a disadvantage this time. But the ones that will be at a disadvantage will be those that draw outside posts. Keeneland's main track is 1 1/16 around, which means that for 2-turn main track races of 1 1/8 or less, there's a short run to the first turn. And for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile and races at 1 1/16, they'll be using the first finish line, which means a very short stretch run as well, and horses having to lose ground making their move on the second turn or getting blocked. Ground loss and trouble may well matter more than anything else in those races. Something to keep in mind is that most of these horses are at the end of a long season. Stake horses generally run a high percentage of tops, but that has not been true at the Breeders' Cup. In the tables that follow, a top is defined as more than 1 point better than a horse's previous top. A pair is within 1 point either way of that top. An off race as more than 1 but no more than 4 points worse than the top. And an X as worse than that. We looked at the last 3 Breeders' Cups not run in California, so that the issue of east-west acclimation was not a factor. More than half the dirt runners ran more than 4 points off their top, a very big number, with very few running new tops, and that includes 2-year-olds, who are much more likely to run new tops than older horses. Grass horses tend to run figures in a tighter range, so it's not surprising that far fewer ran X's and more paired their tops. Still, very few ran new tops, and again, this included the 2-year-olds. The takeaway is that a lot of horses are worn out at the end of the year, and if it looks like they might be ready to tail off, they probably are. Trainers have figured this out, and this year there are some top horses who have been given 2 months rest into the Breeders' Cup. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. The final global point concerns drug testing, which we bring up every year. Breeders' Cup testing is tougher than year-round testing in all American jurisdictions with the possible exception of California. And that may be part of why so many horses don't run their race. It's important to keep an eye on the big-name trainers, not in terms of how many races they win, but whether their horses are running well under these conditions. This year's Breeders' Cup is less about finding the best horse and more about figuring out which ones are going to run their race and get a decent trip.